Hi, my name's Alessandro Rivero, and today I'm going to try and explain everything I can about the 1951 romantic musical An American in Paris. We're going to try and look at it through the lens of feminist theory. So let's set out the main points that I'm going to talk about during this video, right? We're going to talk about mainly the characters Lise Bouvier and Milo Roberts, the two main female leads. Then we're going to talk about how they are, as women, treated, viewed, and, represented in this movie, right? Let's start with Lise, right? Because she's important. She's the first one introduced at the beginning of the movie. She doesn't get a self-narrative description like the men do. She doesn't say who she is, where she is, what she's doing, like all the men did, even though two of them aren't even main characters. No. She gets described by her male lover to a male friend who's trying to guess and quite literally is criticizing who this woman is, right? And the only way that we get to see Lise Bouvier is through performance, right? She's an accessory to the man's words. She's eye candy to the audience. He says she is one thing, and then there she is with certain clothes in a certain setting, performing a certain dance. She is quite literally being shown to us as an eye catcher and a compliment to the man's words. This is quite literally, we're seeing this female character through the male gaze openly, right? And the male gaze is a bad thing because when we describe women only through how men perceive them, especially in such an era of sexism. Don't be wrong, sexism is still prominent now, but it was much more back then, right? Women had less freedom and all that, right? So, back to the point. When we see women so specifically through a man's eyes, it is often a very sexist portrayal. And that's what happens in the movie. So, by comparison, I'll get to the point. By comparison, we have Milo Roberts, the other side of the coin. She is the undesirable one, right? Now, she doesn't get an introduction by a man, right? But the way that she is portrayed as a character in the movie is a complete opposite of Lise's. So we can see it in their bodies. Lise is a brunette. She is much younger. She is stunning and shy and soft-spoken. And, men adore her, right? Henri loves her, took care of her. Jerry's after her. And then we have Milo Roberts, right? We learn that she's a lot more flirtatious. She's had failed relationships before. She is taller and less petite, right? Tall compared to the men, too. She is blonde. She is rich and takes care of herself, and she's trying to find someone. She's already failed to find men, and she's trying to find and seduce more men, right? And she is the cause of a lot of conflict, minor conflict within the movie. Jerry thinks that she is treating him like a prostitute. She's trying to use her money and her influence to get men, right? She causes fights and drama and gets emotional, like we see after the bar scene when Jerry dances with Lise. So you can see, male gaze. Lise is the perfect, good model housewife. Milo is the dramatic, emotional, flirtatious, undesirable woman. So we've talked about these characters, right? Lise and Milo and how they're portrayed as women through the male gaze. But now let's talk about how these women are treated by their male counterparts in the movie, right? And this is important. So we have Lise, right? The female lead, the main character. Jerry's in love with her. Henri's in love with her. When Jerry first sees Lise, he can't help but stare at her, right? He's on another table and he's just gawking at her. And she noticed, and Milo noticed what he was doing, and Milo gets annoyed and Jerry ignores her. And then Jerry lies at her, takes her away from the table, goes to dance with her, even though clearly she is not comfortable. She doesn't know who she is or what's happening. And this is portrayed in the movie as maybe annoyingly funny, charming, bold, daring, right? Nothing bad. She complains, but not too much. She goes. He has to dance another minute. She stays. And since she stays, obviously it's okay, right? There's an interest there, or she's just not being rude. But what he did's okay. And with this attitude, what you have to see is that it's saying that it's okay for men to do stuff in the name of love. Stuff that might not necessarily be good. For example, Lise has a job, which is, great. Okay, she works. But Jerry tracks her down to said job. And then even interrupts her with a customer to get the customer out so he can flirt and talk with Lise. This is showing how much freedom a man has to chase a woman in the name of love. It's okay to do things that are wrong or nowadays considered creepy in the name of love. And why do we think this is okay? Is it partly just sexism and men just think this is okay? Sure. But in the movie, there's cues that show it's okay. Like, we know that some things are creepy, but they're okay. So let's backtrack a little. Henri says, "This is my lover." And his friend goes, "Isn't she a bit young?" And he's like, "No." And he describes her as an adult, right? And so it's okay. In the job, Jerry interrupts her and really annoys the heck out of her. And then he's like, "Oh, you're just seeing me aggressive. I can be funny." And he acts stupid, and she laughs. And since she laughs and she's bright, his attitude, everything he did is automatically forgiven. It's okay, right? He's like, "Stay another minute for the dance." And she doesn't protest. And so it's okay that he dragged her off and did what he did. So, in a way, the men at the time knew that these attitudes were creepy, but they put him in the name for love, and then they showed the women kind of accepting it, and therefore it is portrayed as okay or charming or just a way to get women. And nowadays, the important thing to think about nowadays, that would never fly, right? You do something like that to women, it's a big red flag, right? It can go as far as being considered sexual harassment, stalking. Henri literally did stalk her by tracking down her job. And these things are all bad. But in society at the time in the 1950s, it was good. And the reason that I chose to talk about this through the lens of feminist theory is because I watched this movie with my girlfriend, and I noticed these creepy attitudes, and I said, "Oh, this is weird." She got angry. And I realized I wasn't the one to get mad. She was the one that made me pause the movie and get mad. So it's worth talking about as a man, these things that we might not notice. And that's the biggest part of this video. So I want you guys to think, if you see this video, right, how would you change the movie, right? How would you portray women in 2020 in the movie An American in Paris? And sure, like, The American in Paris is about the performance, the singing and dancing, and it's a good award-winning movie. But we really need to think about how women were portrayed at the time and how this movie could be improved upon from one of its major flaws, and that is the sexism.